Actually, I'm having a great deal of fun. I think the character of Paladin is an interesting one. He's a really fun man to kind of play.
Picture this, the late 1950s, a time when TV westerns ruled the airwaves. And ruling over all those rough-and-tumble cowpokes was a different breed of hero. Paladin, the sharp-dressed, sharp-shooting, and even sharper-witted star of CBS's Have Gun Will Travel. With his signature black outfit, chess player's intellect, and unorthodox mix of muscle and morals, Paladin, as portrayed by actor Richard Boone, redefined what a TV western could be and left an indelible mark on popular culture. But whatever happened to the man behind the Paladin mask once he rode off into the sunset for the last time? Today we'll delve into the story of Richard Boone, the actor who created an icon, and trace the arc of his life from his early days to his post-Paladin career and legacy. Richard Boone's early life. The man who would be Paladin came into this world as Richard Allen Boone on June 18, 1917, born in sunny Los Angeles to a well-to-do family. But young Richard's home life was far from idyllic, thanks to his domineering father, who was determined to mold his son into a lawyer. Boone would later say of his dad, "We started hating each other almost from the time I could walk." But Richard was cut from a different cloth than his father. The boy had an artist's soul and a love for painting that emerged early on. Canvases, not casebooks, were his calling. But like many an artist before him, Richard initially buckled under to parental pressure and gave law school the old college try, heading to Stanford to hit the books. Uncle Sam, however, had other plans for Richard Boone. World War II was raging, and soon he traded in his textbooks for a sailor's uniform, serving in the U.S. Navy in the Pacific Theater. As Boone would later recall, it was his experiences during the war, culminating in being on active duty during the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that crystallized his resolve to pursue his true passion in life once he returned stateside. "I was filled with a passion," Boone would later say of his post-war mindset, and that passion was for acting. His father be damned, Richard was determined to make his mark not in the courtroom, but on stage and screen. And so, with steely resolve, Boone set out to take Hollywood by storm, breaking into acting and early roles. But as any actor can tell you, a passion for performing doesn't always pay the bills, at least not right away. Boone scuffled and scraped by in those early years, taking any role he could get his hands on. He quickly learned that breaking into the biz was a far tougher gig than the cushy life of a lawyer he left behind. But Boone had grit to match his talent, and slowly but surely, he started to turn heads with his intense, no-nonsense performances. He toggled between playing heavies in big studio pictures like The Halls of Montezuma and leading man roles in leaner, meaner B-movies where he honed his craft and burnished his reputation as a guy who could bring the heat on screen. It was television, though, that really gave Richard Boone his big break. The rise of TV in the early 1950s opened up a whole new frontier for Boone and actors of his ilk. And it was on the small screen where he landed the role that put him on the map, Dr. Conrad Steiner in the groundbreaking medical drama Medic. Medic was a revelation in the world of early television. At a time when most medical shows were pretty, well, antiseptic, Medic brought a bracing dose of realism to the proceedings, showing actual surgical procedures and delving into the personal and professional lives of doctors and nurses. And Boone's performance as the dedicated but complicated Dr. Steiner was the beating heart of the show. Boone snagged his first Emmy nomination for his work on Medic, and Hollywood started to sit up and take notice of this rising star. But little did Boone or the viewing public know that his signature role, the one that would cement his place in the pantheon of TV legends, was just around the corner. Pinto Sykes in The Raid. Rise to fame as Paladin in Have Gun Will Travel. Enter Paladin, the pistol-packing protagonist of Have Gun Will Travel. From the moment Boone stepped on screen in that first episode back in 1957, it was clear that this was no ordinary TV Western hero. For starters, there was his look. No flannel shirts or dusty duds for Paladin. He cut a rather dashing figure in his all-black ensemble, topped off with a raven-hued hat. He was part gunslinger, part gentleman, and all cool. But it wasn't just his threads that set Paladin apart. He was a different breed of cowboy hero, one who relied as much on his wits and wisdom as he did on his quick draw. Paladin was a Renaissance man of the Old West, a polymath who could quote poetry, play a mean game of chess, and outshoot any outlaw who dared to cross him. Each week, Paladin would set out from his swanky San Francisco hotel suite, not exactly your typical cowpoke's home base, to right wrongs and save the day, all for the princely sum of $1,000 a job. His calling card read, "Have gun will travel," and for 6 seasons and 225 episodes, he lived up to that promise with style, smarts, and more than a little swagger. Much of the success of Have Gun Will Travel rested on Richard Boone's capable shoulders. His portrayal of Paladin was a master class in nuance and depth. With a quirk of an eyebrow or a wry quip, Boone could convey volumes about his character's rich inner life. He imbued Paladin with a perfect balance of toughness and tenderness, humor and gravitas, and the viewers couldn't get enough. Have Gun Will Travel quickly became one of the most popular shows on television, a ratings juggernaut that spawned a radio series starring none other than John Dehner as the voice of Paladin, comics, and even a few novels. Paladin was a full-fledged pop culture phenomenon, and Richard Boone was the man of the hour. But Have Gun Will Travel was more than just a rollicking good time. It was also a show that wasn't afraid to tackle some of the thornier social issues of the day. Amidst all the shootouts and showdowns, the series delved into weighty topics like racism, politics, and the nature of justice. And through it all, Paladin served as the show's moral compass, a flawed but fundamentally decent man trying to make his way in a complicated world. Boone racked up 3 Emmy nominations for his work on Have Gun Will Travel, and took home a coveted Producers Guild Award. But perhaps the greatest testament to his performance was the way it elevated the entire Western genre. With Richard Boone as Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel proved that a TV cowboy show could be smart, sophisticated, and socially relevant. It set a new standard for the genre and paved the way for the more complex and nuanced westerns to come, leaving Have Gun Will Travel and later career. But all good things must come to an end, even for a figure as iconic as Paladin. By 1963, after 6 seasons in the saddle, Richard Boone was ready to hang up his holster and move on to new challenges. The grind of cranking out a weekly series had taken its toll, and Boone feared being forever typecast as the Man in Black. So with Have Gun Will Travel in his rearview mirror, Boone set out to reinvent himself as an actor. He tried his hand at another TV series, the aptly titled The Richard Boone Show. But lightning didn't strike twice, and the show only lasted a single season. Undeterred, Boone continued to ply his trade on both the big and small screens throughout the 1960s and 70s. He starred in films like the Paul Newman vehicle Hombre, the marital drama The Arrangement, and even had a memorable turn in the John Wayne swan song The Shootist. On television, he headlined the short-lived Western series Heck Ramsay and lent his distinctive voice to the animated adaptation of The Hobbit. But while Boone's post-Paladin work was often praised, he never quite recaptured the magic and popularity of his Have Gun Will Travel days. In part, this was by design. Boone had grown increasingly disillusioned with the glitz and glamour side of show business and was more interested in doing quality work that challenged him as an actor than chasing ratings or celebrity. In the 1970s, Boone even stepped away from Hollywood for a time to share his craft with a new generation, teaching acting at a small college in Florida. And true to his no-nonsense style, his advice to his students was blunt but heartfelt. "Don't become an actor," he'd tell them, "unless it's an absolute necessity, a compulsion. Not because of the money, because you have no other choice." For Boone, acting was never just a job, it was a calling. And if he couldn't answer that call on his own terms, he'd rather not answer it at all. So he focused more on his first artistic love, painting, and held exhibitions of his work. It was a way to feed his creative soul without having to play by the rules of the Hollywood game. personal life and death. While Richard Boone's professional life was marked by the towering success of Paladin and his uncompromising commitment to his craft, his personal life was a bit more of a tumultuous ride. Boone was married 3 times, with his third and final union to Claire McAloon lasting from 1951 until his death 3 decades later. Boone had 2 children, Peter and Michael, from his first 2 marriages, and it was in part for their sake that, at the height of his fame in the late 1960s, Boone decided to make a major life change. Fed up with the smog and the showbiz rat race of Los Angeles, he packed up and moved his family to the greener pastures of Hawaii. "It's where my heart found peace," Boone would say of his island home. He relished the simpler life he found there, and felt it was a healthier environment for raising his kids, far from the glare of the Hollywood spotlight. But Boone couldn't quit the acting game entirely, and would periodically jet back to the mainland for film and TV gigs. Tragically, it was on one of those working sojourns that Richard Boone's life would come to an end. A lifelong smoker, Boone was diagnosed with throat cancer in the late 1970s. He fought valiantly against the disease, but ultimately succumbed to the cancer, as well as pneumonia, while in St. Augustine, Florida in 1981. He was just 63 years old. Legacy of Richard Boone and Paladin. Though he's been gone for over 4 decades now, Richard Boone's legacy, and particularly his iconic portrayal of Paladin, lives on. Boone is widely regarded as one of the finest actors of his generation, a performer of uncommon intensity and authenticity who elevated every role he touched. But it is as Paladin that Boone will always be most remembered and revered. His portrayal of the erudite and enigmatic gunfighter didn't just redefine the TV Western hero, it set a new standard for complex, multi-dimensional characters on television. Without Paladin paving the way, it's hard to imagine subsequent TV anti-heroes like Tony Soprano, Don Draper, or Walter White ever gracing our screens. And the impact of Have Gun Will Travel itself can't be overstated. The show's blend of action, humor, and social commentary proved that TV westerns could be more than just kid stuff or mindless shoot-'em-ups. It could tackle adult themes and grapple with real-world issues, all while still delivering rousing entertainment. In that way, Have Gun Will Travel was a true trailblazer, and its influence can still be felt on the small screen to this day. But Richard Boone was more than just Paladin, and his legacy extends beyond a single role, no matter how momentous. Throughout his career, whether playing white hats or black hats, leads or supporting parts, Boone brought a raw honesty and a fierce intelligence to his performances that made him mesmerizing to watch. He was an actor's actor, a man who cared more about the integrity of his craft than the trappings of celebrity. He could be tough, even prickly at times, but that was only because he had such high standards for himself and his work. For Boone, acting wasn't a means to an end, it was the end itself, a sacred calling that demanded everything he had to give. And give he did, leaving behind a body of work that stands the test of time and testifies to his immense talent and unshakable dedication. From his early days playing heavies and heroes to his indelible turn as Paladin to his latter-day character parts, Richard Boone left an indelible mark on the worlds of film and television. He was a true original, an artist to his core, and his loss is still keenly felt by all who love great acting. Richard Boone's acting philosophy. To fully understand Richard Boone's legacy, it's essential to delve into his unique approach to acting and the philosophy that guided him throughout his career. Boone was not just a talented performer, but a deep thinker about his craft, a man who constantly strove to understand and articulate what made great acting tick. At the core of Boone's acting philosophy was a fierce commitment to truth and authenticity. He had little patience for artifice or affectation, and always sought to ground his performances in real human emotion and experience. An actor's job, he once said, is to make the unreal real, to make the imaginary imaginative. For Boone, this meant immersing himself completely in his roles, living and breathing his characters until they felt like second nature. He was a proponent of what would later be called method acting, the technique of drawing on one's own life experiences and emotions to inform a performance. But unlike some adherents of the method, Boone never let his immersion in a role consume him. He understood the importance of maintaining a healthy distance between himself and his characters. This ability to inhabit a role fully while still maintaining his own sense of self was a key to Boone's success as an actor. It allowed him to bring a naturalism and a sense of lived-in reality to his performances, even when playing larger-than-life figures like Paladin. In Boone's hands, these characters never felt like caricatures, but like fully fleshed-out human beings with their own inner lives and motivations. Another cornerstone of Boone's acting philosophy was his belief in the power of stillness and subtlety. In an era when many actors were known for their big, broad performances, Boone understood that sometimes less was more. He had an uncanny ability to convey volumes with a simple glance or gesture, to say more with a moment of silence than others could with a page of dialogue. This economy of expression was particularly evident in his portrayal of Paladin. Despite being the star of an action-packed Western series, Boone's Paladin was never a one-dimensional tough guy. He brought a quiet intensity and a sense of coiled power to the role, conveying Paladin's complex inner life through subtle shifts in expression and body language. It was a masterclass in understatement and a testament to Boone's skill as an actor. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Richard Boone's approach to acting was the way he was able to marry this subtlety and naturalism with a true sense of theatricality and presence. Boone understood that acting was, at its heart, a performative art, and that part of an actor's job was to command the stage or screen, to draw the audience into the world of the story. In this, Boone was a master. Whether playing a hero or a villain, a lead or a supporting role, he had an undeniable charisma and magnetism that made him impossible to look away from. He could be still and subtle one moment, and then explode with a raw, primal energy the next. It was this ability to keep the audience on their toes, to surprise and engross them, that made Boone such a compelling performer. This combination of truth, subtlety, and theatricality formed the bedrock of Richard Boone's acting philosophy, and it's what sets him apart as one of the greats of his generation. He wasn't just a skilled technician or a magnetic presence, but a true artist who constantly strove to elevate his craft and to use his gifts in service of the story and the audience. It's a philosophy that still resonates today, and one that continues to inspire and influence actors who strive to follow in Boone's footsteps. His legacy is not just the roles he played or the performances he gave, but the example he set as an actor wholly dedicated to his art. A man who understood that great acting was about truth, courage, and the willingness to give oneself over completely to the demands of the craft. The story of Richard Boone is the story of a man who lived and breathed his art. From his hard-scrabble beginnings to his hard-won success, Boone never lost sight of what mattered most to him: the craft of acting and the pursuit of excellence. In Paladin, he created a character for the ages, a figure who looms as large in our collective imagination today as he did when he first rode across our TV screens all those years ago. But Boone was no one-trick pony, and his legacy extends far beyond the confines of a single role or genre. He was a true artist, uncompromising and unforgettable, and his work will endure as a testament to the power of great acting and the indomitable human spirit.